If you'd like to be able to listen to the show without ads and have full access to bonus content, that's an option. To find out how, please go to dogmanencounters.com/podcast. Hey everyone, thanks so much for joining us for another live stream episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I really appreciate you being here. As I'm sure a lot of you noticed, I advertised that there was going to be a special midweek episode of the show on Tuesday night, where James was going to be coming back to answer some questions. I had a bunch of questions. I still have a bunch of questions to ask him, and I figured a lot of you in the live chat would as well. Well, unfortunately, right before we started that show, his internet went down. We were hoping that it was going to come back up, but I guess it just wasn't meant to be. So what I did is I got back with him and I've got him rescheduled to come on this Monday night to do that part 2 episode. So please try not to forget, Monday night at 9 p.m. Eastern time, I'll have James back on here to answer all those questions, both mine and yours in the live chat as well. Well, having said that, without any further ado, let's get to tonight's show. For tonight, I've got Jim Powell coming on. Jim,
What's up?
thanks so much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man. How you doing?
Oh, fair to middling. How about yourself?
Better than I deserve, brother.
Yeah, I know the feeling there. Well, Jim, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Sure. So, obviously, my name's Jim. I am the host of the Night's Watch, and you can find me on the YouTubes. I'm a pretty cool dude, and I do a lot of the same stuff here. You know, I'm sure you guys are quite familiar. I interview folks, plenty of people that have stories, lots of researchers that are out in the field. I'm sure you'll find some names that you know. I also go out into the field myself and do some filming out there for the channel. I dropped my first little mini doc not too long ago. It's called Enigma in the Smokies. It's a great time. It's a great little video, considering I had not even $100 worth of, equipment for the budget, but had some really cool, interesting things out there happen. And yeah, I'm also a cameraman too for Relic Films. So yeah, that's a little about me.
When do you have time to sleep?
Every night. I sleep like the dead, brother.
I'll bet you do. After doing all
Yeah.
that, that can't be easy to get it all done. That's awfully impressive. You hold it together, though.
Doing my best. I do need to kind of step back a little bit. I'm going to make a small change to the way I do things. Instead of doing like a live every weekend, I'm going to start moving to seasons, and that'll kind of like open the window up for me to do some more editing, film work and stuff like that to make the more interesting, better products for field work and more of them. So if you guys go like watching folks go out into the woods, especially a hillbilly like me from Alabama, might want to come hang with me.
Yeah, there are worse things they can do for a good time, wouldn't you say?
Oh yeah, definitely.
That's one of those things, when you hang around a ladies' man, there's always that fall off tendency where the women that aren't interested in him for whatever reason, you've got that potential they're going to be interested in you. Well, Jim here, and we're going to get into this tonight. When you hear people talk about cryptid magnets, this guy right here, he's a cryptid / paranormal magnet in the essence. I mean, he is just all the experiences he's had, again, not just with cryptids, but paranormal as well. It's just ridiculous. But some people are that way for whatever reason. These things are just drawn to certain people, which begs the question: have you ever played with the Ouija board at any point in your life?
No, I have never done that, but I will tell you guys how it did kind of pop off for me. So it was probably 2013-ish, maybe 14-ish. I can't remember exactly. But I heard a really interesting podcast with Joe Rogan and a feller named Stephen Greer. And, he started talking about this really interesting thing called CE5. And I grew up in, well, maybe I should say that in my area of Fife, Alabama, we used to be known for UFOs. And, I grew up hearing all the stories. I mean, a UFO supposedly touched down, like 1,000 yards right over there in the field. And I kind of grew up playing in that. Like, this stuff was already on my mind. I've always had an interest in it. And it turns out even like my wife's side of the family has a big connection and role into the events that happened here in Fife. And I can safely say that from my own research and interviewing people that were involved, like the chief of police and stuff like that of Fife, and getting to hear like everybody's perspectives, I can safely say that I'm very sure that my grandfather-in-law, after his son had an experience in the field one night, is responsible for ending the UFO flap. But I also got to say the flap ended in quotations because it still happens, and I saw them all the time, all at night, and I heard the CE5 stuff, and I was like, man, this stuff is pretty hippy dippy, but he's having some amazing results. Why not try it? And I did multiple nights in a row, and then all of a sudden, something kind of showed up in the at the end of the driveway one night, and it gave me a special flavor of PTSD, I guess you could say. But after that, things kind of took a turn for the worse, started going downhill, and I've had so many paranormal experiences since then, and it really didn't change for me up until I got my life right with God. But that's a different story. Now, guys, if y'all want to hear any of that, feel free to hang out on my channel. I have documented everything, so it runs the gambit from aliens to shadow entities to Bigfoot, Dogman, which is what we're here to talk about tonight, and just even a giant spider is thrown in there. So it gets crazy. It gets crazy. So
I was doing fine when you were talking about your experiences until you told me about that giant spider that you ran into.
yeah, that was a weird one, man. That was a weird one. I don't I don't know really what to think about that. I know that if I could go back in time, I would have had a flamethrower readily available. I did try to pull my 9mm out on it, but as soon as I got my hand on the firearm, it took off into the tall grass. But we'll get to that here in a little while.
Phew. Wow. Yeah, that's not good. The idea that giant spiders are out there in addition to everything else. Yeah, that isn't my idea of a good time.
Mm,
Not,
yes, yes.
not in the least. Before I get on to my first question for you, I see Anne's got a good question of her own. She wants to know, what is a CE5?
So CE5 is something that Mr. Greer came up with. It's like it's Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind. It's it's essentially like a meditation type thing while you're also like broadcasting signals that were recorded into a crop or that was recorded from a crop circle across walkie talkies. I mean, it's a lot of different and yet altogether the same things kind of going on with it. But you know, if I can let my own personal experiences, kind of help guide you guys in the audience about that, is CE5 is a bad hot no. Trust me, you might as well be playing with the Ouija board because you're asking entities to come in and interact with you. And that's never a good thing, It got extremely sideways for me, and yeah, it was a very bad time, and it made my life really hard for a long time until, I started getting smarter about things and kind of got a little bit of a grasp and figured stuff out. So I'd say stay away from it, but I'm also not going to tell you what to do. Not your daddy. So I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, that's a good way to answer it. I just wish you knew the risks you'd be taking before you actually, well, maybe you did know the risks, but I just wish you wouldn't have done that because
Yeah.
yeah, you're probably not done yet having experiences.
Uh, I mean, this is true, but it's a little bit different now. I'm not afraid to go out into the woods and encounter things now. Things don't come searching for me to, for lack of a better word, torture me anymore. Now I am bold about what I do and confident with who I am, and I go out and do my best to expose them. So it's a little bit different. It's I guess that's what makes me a good cameraman for one thing, for Relic, because when things get a little hairy out there in the woods, I ain't backing down because as far as I'm concerned, there's worse hills to die on. So this is me.
Well, one thing's for sure, you definitely don't frighten easily. That's a
No.
given.
Yeah. Like I
Yeah.
said, a special little touch of PTSD. I don't know what that little flavor is that I got out of all that, but yeah, I ain't running. I ain't running no more. So
Well, you're not sipping soup through a straw for the rest of your life the way most people would after having a third of the experiences that you've had. So that says it all right there for me. It
true,
does.
true.
All right, Jim, please tell us about this dogman encounter you had now. Give us every
Sure.
last detail that comes to mind.
All right, let's get into some meat and taters here. All right, so this is before I got my life kind of straightened out and I was still going through all kind of experiences. And I believe it would be around the 2019 timeframe. It might even be 2020. I'm not for sure on that. I have to look at my notes, but essentially, I had just kind of come on to the subject of Dogman. I've heard about everything else for forever since I was little. And when Dogman came up, you know, in a more interesting ways, people started beginning to like report the experiences. I found it just absolutely fascinating. Like I was like, wow, I want to know more about this. Like Bigfoot's cool enough, but this is a little bit extra, and my brain is like, how do I figure out what this is? Like this doesn't make sense evolutionarily or something like that. I'm like, this is neat. I want to dive into it, right? So I would say I was probably consuming Dogman content, every podcast I could find, for 8 to 10 hours every day while I'm at work because I'm a welder. I've got my hood down and I'm listening to whatever I want to all night long. So I'm consuming the stuff constantly and just trying to wrap my head around it, and it's weird because I remember that one night, I believe it was a Friday night. It was the last break of our shift. And for a couple nights in a row, I guess I should say, this very large dog kept showing up on our break to hang out with us. And, I've never really been around wolves or anything like that. But in my frame of reference, it looked like a big husky or a malamute or something like that. I mean, this thing's like 150 pounds and bulky. And it didn't really pay me much attention. Everybody else that was out there was feeding it tater chips and beef jerky, and it wanted to hang out with them more. But the thing, strangely enough, did have a collar on it, and I promise y'all this will make sense later on as we go through this. But it did have a collar on it. There's a number. We call the number, and this kid comes and picks it up while he's riding on his bike. And it's like a little 14-year-old kid. He's driving around a city called Arab, Alabama, you know, at 9 something at night. I guess he's being like a super edge lord or something. Like he fits that persona very well. And a slight, history of that area is there's a large population of people there that are really, really into the occult. I don't know the whys. I just know that it's there and that it's been there for a very long time. And anyways, we call the kid, he comes and picks it up. He's like, "Oh yeah, sorry, she broke off the chain." And he holds up this chain and it's like a logging chain. It's huge. It's like, and we're all like, how, okay, this is a big dog, but how in the world did it break off of that? and it kept happening until that very last night. And, I'm not paying much attention to it. Like, I don't got the beef jerky. It don't care about me. And, I'm still keeping on and listening and trying to research about this stuff and try to wrap my head around it. And I remember it's at the end of the night when I'm fixing to go home, still got the AirPods in and listening. And as I'm walking to the car, I feel like a barometric pressure shift or change. Like this is something that I've noticed with a lot of the experiences that I have. Like the atmosphere, for lack of a better term, kind of changes and you feel it. It's heavy, it's statically charged. It's so strange. But like I tune into that and I'm like, wait, what in the world? And then all of a sudden I hear, through the AirPods, something running up on me very quickly, and all I hear is clickety clackety of claws on pavement. And suffice it to say, this is plenty of time after my first round of initial experiences. I'm a very jumpy person at this point, still kind of am, but I sense that, I hear that, and I'm just like, oh no. I jump and turn around in midair, land in like some kind of karate stance, and throw my hands up and ready to just try to not die. And then this thing goes skirting off away from me, and I realize I'm like, it's the dog. And it turns out, according to him, it's a wolf dog. It was like 66% Arctic wolf, I think he said, and Malinois or something. I don't know. I don't know what the other part is. But, it's that dog, and it tucks his tail and kind of skitters off to the side. And I feel bad. I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Come here, come here. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to scare you as much as you definitely scared me. And, it comes up and I start petting on it, loving on it, apologizing to the thing. And I'm like, look, I'm sorry. Your owner seems like a bit of a jerk, probably not taking good care of you. Obviously, you're off the chain again. You want to hang out with us for whatever reason, beef jerky. And I'm like, look, I'm sorry. Look, I'd even take you home if I could, little puppy, because you seem really nice. But, I've got a newborn and a new puppy. And I'm building up my own house. I'm living with my parents at the moment. I'm like, look, you just a big wolf dog like you just ain't gonna fit. So I'm sorry. You got to hang out here and wait for Mr. Edgy to come and pick you up, you know. And I start to get in the car, and this thing is trying as hard as it possibly can to get into the car with me. And it's everything I can do to just push this thing out and be like, look, I'm sorry. No, 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 you can't. This ain't gonna happen. This ain't gonna work. It's not you. It's me. Sorry. Just no. And I eventually wrestle it out and close the door. You know, throw the car in reverse, start driving, start going down the road. And this thing is just following me the entire time. I mean, it's running circles around my car, literally. And I don't lose it until I hit about 55 miles an hour. And when I finally lose it, it becomes out of sight, out of mind. Weird, but whatever. I've got research to be a doing. So it's an hour-long drive from work to my house. And to have a little bit of a perspective, like for me where I'm at, you have to travel first north, and then you got to cut west before you can get to Arab. But if you're already in Arab and you just go straight, the opposite, which would be east in a straight line as the crow flies at, let's just say, 50 miles an hour, you would have no problem at all catching up to me. Now, none of this is in my mind. This is all hindsight, right? And I'm driving down the road. I'm about maybe 10 miles away or so from the house, still listening. And As I'm fixing to go by this house that is close to where my adopted brother lives, I noticed that there is a shape on the side of the road. And this house, it's kind of set off the road a good ways, and it's got a real large fence all the way around it. The fence is about 5 feet tall, and they keep a bunch of sheep in there. And I see a shape right there at the pole, right up against the fence. And I'm like, is that a dog? What is that? And, I start to slow down because, I mean, it's for whatever reason, the sight of a dog in my brain is taking all of my attention, and I throw on the high beams and I start slowing down and I'm getting there and I'm getting there. And when I finally got a good look at this thing, I realized that this is not a dog at all. Canid for sure, but what I'm seeing, my brain is not comprehending. It's the square peg in a round hole situation going on right now because what I see is something that looks like a giant wolf sitting down on the ground. And, this 5 foot tall fence is coming up to right here on this thing as it's sitting down. And, and I'll explain what it looks like here in a second. But, my brain is just like, dogs or wolves are not that big when they sit, you know? And I'm basically yelling at this point in time as I'm in the car. I'm like, what is my life? Like I'm literally listening about you right now. Like how how are you there? The square peg isn't working. What's happening? I'm mad. I'm yelling at it and cussing it basically. And as I'm like getting like right there at it, luckily it never really like turns to look at me. It's laser focused on the sheep that's in that yard. And finally like sense catches up to me and I'm just like, what am I doing? Like it's time to go. I stomp it. The turbo in the car revs up and I'm gone. And I'm still trying to like rationalize. I'm like, what what did I just see? You know, and it's and the podcast I'm listening to isn't helping. It's like Dogman, Dogman, Dogman. And I'm just like, that has to be Dogman. I mean, there's nothing that's that big. You know, I'm thinking about it, and then, like the very last detail kind of creeps up on me, you know, and I realize that the coloration of this said Dogman is exactly to the T, the exact same as the wolf dog that tried to go home with me. And it's just kind of dawns on me. I'm just like, oh my gosh, like what what did I just see? What did I just narrowly avoid? Like, what is my life? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, whatever, get home now. And it's crazy because, like I said, I've got this thing full on in the headlights. Like, I see every single detail of this thing. As I said, it's sitting down. The 5 foot fence comes to here. So I don't even know how big that translates to when it stands up. Its legs are like kind of like Indian style, I guess you could say, like in the way that like they're pointed up almost. It's got a really flat back. The best way to describe that really is like, I don't know how many people in the audience have a dog that thinks that it's human and will sit on the couch and watch TV. But if you do, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about because my dog does it. It looks exactly like that, except more straight. Like her back can't do that quite, but like the position of the legs and everything, like it's exact. This thing's got really long arms. Like, I can see only like a part of the forearm as the rest of it is in the tall grass. And unlike unlike the typical description that we kind of, I guess you would say, see of like artist renditions of Dogman, like this thing doesn't look like the incredible furry Hulk. It's not a bodybuilder that's sitting there, but it is built like an athlete in that, I guess I would say like more of a basketball player style of frame to it, and it's very humanoidal in its shape and everything. Like nothing about it is screaming wolf sitting there, you know. It's got this weird kind of hump or something like on the back of its neck that kind of goes down to its shoulder, or maybe no, not shoulder, but like mid back almost, and it's kind of maned and fluffed out. It has a very large and what I would say is disproportionately large head for its body. Like its body is obviously big enough, but its head is bigger than what I even feel like that should be. It's got a very long and flat snout. I can count the wrinkles in its jowls. It's not growling, but for whatever reason, there are wrinkles in it. And realistically, the only variable that changes from the big dog, which is, this is the only thing that gives me pause, is the ears. Now, thank you, Angel. The ears are not pointed and triangular, like what we normally see. Its ears are the exact shape of a German Shepherd. You know, I don't know what's going on there with this thing. I don't know exactly how to wrap my head around it. You know, I don't know 100% if the wolf dog is connected, but if it wasn't the exact same coloration to the T, then something else is going on. And I don't know. Is it a chicken or egg situation? Was somebody going through some kind of occultic humiliation type ritual before they could fully come into being a lichen, werewolf, whatever verbiage you wish to attach to that? I don't know. I don't know. But it seems to me like in that particular situation with that particular entity that I saw, I lean towards classical werewolf. But I don't have all the answers and I don't know. But if I'm lying, I'm dying. And that is exactly what I saw. So there we go.
Wow, Jim, what a mind trip that must have been. I
Yeah.
mean, if you just would have seen that quote unquote dog man by that fence, that'd be one thing. But yeah, the possibility that the wolf dog that you wrestled with was the same thing that you saw up against that fence, that really is a trip. How much
Yeah.
more difficult was it for you to come to terms with that experience, considering the fact that it could have been the same being?
I don't know that I would say that it was difficult. I mean, by this time, I've already experienced plenty. It's just kind of like, you know, yesterday's flavor was peach and today it's blue raspberry. Like, it's ice cream. It's another Friday night for Jim. Essentially, I'm not shocked by any of it. And actually, to be fair, um, my grandmother about 2 weeks before this happened now made a very interesting comment to me about something that she had saw because, you know, me working second shift at that time, when I'd wake up, I'd come over here to work on building the house, go to work, come back home, build the house, go to sleep, rinse and repeat. And she had made the comment to me. She's like, "Hey, Bubba, have you ever seen anything weird while you're over there working?" I'm like, "No, not really. Why?" She's like, "I saw the strangest thing the other day." I was like, "Oh, okay. Tell me about it." She's like, "I saw a bear out there." I'm like, "Bear?" Like, Grandma, bears have been extinctified in our area of Alabama for the past 30, 40 years. I'm like, "I highly doubt that you saw a bear." She's like, "Well, I don't know what it was, but what else is that big, that tall, and can walk around on two legs and has a muzzle?" I'm like, "Oh, I don't know. What color was it? Black?" I'm like, "Oh, well, theoretically, it can only be one of two things that I can think of, but no, I really haven't had anything crazy happen to me out there. But the fact that you're mentioning this to me now is disconcerting. But thank you for the warning. I appreciate that. So I don't know. My the research area that I do, like that's local to me, 10 miles up the road the other way, has a history, that's even recorded going back into the 1850s, with all kind of strange phenomenon from Bigfoot to Goat Man and ghostly apparitions. And like, granted, I'm sure plenty of bridges out there in America have the same kind of lore, but I mean, that's only 10 miles that way. I live in Fife, where we were at one time like the UFO capital of the world or something. I mean, shoot, we even made it into the pages of Hunt for the Skinwalker. I've been around it enough. I'm not really surprised by any of it at this point. So maybe that answers the question.
Yeah, that's a good way to answer it. I was wondering how you felt about that. That's the kind of experience right there, Jim, where you have that experience and you lie in bed all night trying to wrap your mind around what in the world just happened.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, that night I definitely did do that. you know, I was contemplating it for the night, but after that it was just another day, another dollar. Get over it pretty quick.
Well, that's a good quality to have. You said that you wrestled that wolf dog out of your car.
hmm
Did you ever get the impression that it let you force it out of your car?
I mean, as big and heavy as that thing was, if it really wanted to overpower me or hurt me, it easily could have. I don't think that I could have stopped it if it really wanted to do anything, whether that be perceived as nice or bad. So probably.
MX is a good question for you. They want to know, does Jim have any scars from that fight?
When I say wrestle, it's like your dog is trying to sit on your lap, and I'm trying to get it off. You know, I'm not literally fighting a bear out there. No, no, no. It's figure of speech. It didn't hurt me enough to really speak on or really like take note of. So no, no.
That's the thing. I just don't understand it. Of course, it could have forced its way into the car and it wouldn't have been a thing at all you could have
Right.
done to stop it. But what's the purpose of it doing that? Making you think that it was trying to get into the car when it obviously didn't want to. It's the same thing like the fact that these guys go so far out of the way to terrorize eyewitnesses when they're
Mm,
doing all they can to make you think they want to rip you apart, but they obviously don't because they don't do that. And they're in total
right.
control of the situation. I mean, if they wanted to do that, there wouldn't be a single thing stopping them. So it just makes you wonder what their motivations are. I've
Mm.
postulated for years that it's because they're apex predators with a ridiculous amount of intelligence and they're just bored and they do this sort of thing to entertain themselves. But that's just a supposition. We don't know.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, it's hard to pin down any of this, realistically, and I have the answers that I wanted to get, I guess you could say, that out of the culmination of my spirit experiences, and like I said, it wasn't till I gave my life back to Christ and started living right and be trying to be a good person that all of these experiences, changed for me. Now, granted, I'm not going to sit up here and beat everybody over the head with Bible. That's not what I do. So rest easy out there, folks. But I mean, that is the way things happened for me, like nothing stopped and it just kept on going until I made that change. And when you kind of start looking into things and you start looking at, spiritual warfare, you kind of learn a little bit about how that stuff works. You'll look at things like in, say, the book of Revelation, right? Where like the beasts of the field, have like this thing lifted over them, and all of a sudden they go out and they unalive a third of the population. Well, the interesting thing about that is in the Greek, that word is translated from therion, if I'm not mistaken. My ancient Greek ain't the best, but I'm pretty sure that's how that goes. But when you look into what that word is, it is essentially describing a chimera, something that is pieced together to make this monster, for lack of a better term. And, with all the experiences that I've had with this stuff, it makes me wonder if, yeah, they can really mess you up if they have legal right to do so. But if they don't, they're just gonna scare the bejesus out of you, you know? But that's just my opinion. That's where my head goes with it. That's just me. So maybe that can answer somebody their question, pull a little thread and you know, whatever. That's just what I feel about the whole thing personally.
When it comes to something like this, it's so hard to put your thumb on. It's so hard to get answers for so many things to do with dogmen. The answers are going to come from tons and tons of different directions. You just have to put the puzzle
Right.
together, I guess. That's the best way to put it.
And there's definitely different varieties of them out there. With mine, I say werewolf, maybe, but werewolf, skinwalker, tomato, tomato. Government created things that are essentially chimeras. Uh, shoot, what's the word I'm looking for? Cynocephaly. Not to mention the fallen angels and what they did post flood and stuff like that. Like there seems to be a lot of routes and avenues that these types of creatures can come from. And to be fair, there might even be some kind of flesh and blood thing out there that is that constantly all the time that can account for some things too. Like, I don't know. I just know that the world is a crazy place and it's really, really interesting. So,
If we only knew the half of it.
right.
Yeah, definitely. I've got a question for you from Caleb Gates. And
Sure.
Caleb wants to know, Jim, what did the dog man that was in your car smell like? I need to know.
Okay. Well, so there is a slight kind of musk to it. It's not like it wasn't an overpowering, thing. Granted, this is the dog, so not the dog man. So I didn't stop to take a whiff and ask it questions. But, like I'll point out the coloration, and I think that might have a little bit to do with it in that, like its stomach is white. Its back has like a really dark charcoaly gray streak going down it, but the sides, like its flank, looks like a like a really dirty dog that's kind of pea stained white almost, like it's almost like a really dingy blonde. I wonder if the must musty smell that I got from it would account for that because whenever I see that color, I just associate it with neglected and traumatized dog, because that's the color that was. And it, like I said, it wasn't really overpowering. It's not something that really sticks out, boldly as a detail, but I would say dingy, musty-ish, at that point in the story, if that answers the question.
It's bad enough being a couple of steps away from them. Having
Mm,
one in your car and having that smell linger on the way home, that wouldn't be my idea of fun.
mm, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
not at all. Looks like Damian Hughes wants to know, came in late. What state did this sighting occur? Daytime and weather conditions.
Sure. So this was in the state of Alabama, the northeast region of it. It would be an Arab for the dog part of it, and where I saw on the side of the road would be technically, I believe, in the small city of Painter before you get to Geraldine. Time of day, this would be around 12:20 ish a.m. It would be in the fall time. Well, not fall. No, no, hold on. Spring. It would be in the springtime. I would say probably March, late March. So probably in the 60s here. And as far as anything else weather related, I remember it just being a clear night. So I don't think there was much in the way of rainfall or anything that would precipitate too much data from that particular amount of points.
How far would it have had to travel, in your opinion, to get to where you wrestled with that wolf dog, quote unquote wolf dog, to keep it out of your car or to get it out of your car to where you saw that creature, that being by the fence?
As the crow flies, probably about 15 to 20 miles, maybe 25 at the most, but somewhere within that range. Like I said, from my route, I have to go north a good ways before I can turn back west. So I don't know the exact mileage of what that would be.
Well, that's a pretty good distance. What kind of time are we talking about? How long did it take you to get from that one spot to where you saw that creature by the fence?
So that would have been at the 45-minute mark for me and my trip. Like I said, I was almost home, about 10 miles, maybe 15 at the most.
Okay, well, if it was about 20 miles and we're looking at that time frame, if it was the same being, it really had to be moving fast. If it was moving conventionally, but if it did
Mm.
have the ability to just wink out of one spot and appear in another, then that's a whole nother ball of wax.
This is true. And, to be fair, like this actually does bring up a bit of a question, is it a chicken or an egg type situation? Because, if I've already mentioned that things were pretty much messing with me at this point of all different varieties, could something ethereal out there that wants to mess with me be like, hey, I want to mess with him today. How do I do that? Oh, he's listening to Dogman right now. Let's do Dogman. Cool. Okay, what's Dogman look like? Just copy the wolf dog. That was crazy. Just do that. You know, is that a possibility? Sure. I mean, anything is possible, and I don't know, but you know, questions are valid, and I don't have the answers. I wish I did. Maybe. Maybe I don't want to know what the answer actually is. That might be a little hard to sleep through. I don't.
Well, you know what they say, be careful what you wish for.
Ooh, that's a big one. That is a big one.
Yeah, they say that for a reason too. Let's ask another question from the live chat. Pull up a
Sure.
good one. This one is from Lumen 101. And he wants to know, Jim, what would you do if you're able to catch it? Would you want to?
That's a good question. That depends. That depends a lot. Do I have titanium chains to wrap this thing up in? Because if so, and I'm perfectly safe in quotations, I mean, it'd probably make for good television or something to interview such a thing. It depends on what it actually is, because if it's something more along the lines of supernatural in terms of chimera or something, along those lines, no, I wouldn't want nothing to do with that. If it is a werewolf within the classical sense of things, you know, my time frame at that point in time would still say no, want nothing to do with that. My time, like my mind frame of today would say that's still a human being. They're not dead yet. Can I minister to them? And try to pull them out of this demonic power that seems to have control of them. That's what I would say. But I mean, still, ultimately, man, life's too short to tangle with a dog, man, whether you got chains or not, that'll hold it. Clearly, this giant logging chain couldn't even restrain the dog, let alone the bigger, different, and changed version that I saw. So I don't know. It's a good question. Good question.
Yeah, for so many reasons, it's so hard to
Right.
even wrap your mind around what it would take to catch one of these things. I don't
Yeah.
even know what it would take.
Who knows? I don't think silver bullet's gonna do it, but that's just me.
No, I don't think so either. As a guy who's had several Sasquatch encounters, as well as that one with a possible dog man there, how
Yeah.
would you compare and contrast what it's like to have encounters with a dog man compared
Oh,
to a Sasquatch?
it's 100% different. 100% different. Um, Bigfoot or Sasquatch and my interactions with them are more almost almost kind of skittish in a way. Like they don't really go out of their way to freak you out. They will, don't get me wrong. Like you got one that's going to be really territorial and want to prove to you who's boss, that's going to be 100% different. You might get bluff charged, you might have stuff, thrown at you, get hit with infrasound. I mean, like those, they will mess with you, but generally speaking, that only seems to go so far. Whereas Dogman, I feel like they're all about like the mind games. You know what I mean? Like they really want to worm their way into your head and just mess with you as much as they possibly can and just scare you to death. It's the weirdest thing. I'd rather deal with Bigfoot than I would Dogman. I can 100% promise you that. I've dealt with plenty of them while in the field and filming, like they're way easier to deal with. Why? I don't know. I have a theory, but I ultimately don't know.
Well, that's the ultimate source of wisdom right there, being able to say, I don't know, instead of trying to claim that you do know, do have the answers to a lot of these questions.
Right.
Like I told you before, there's so many questions about these guys we're never going to have the answers to. All we can do is guess, and that's all
Right.
there is to it. Yeah, definitely. All right, Jim, I can't wait any longer. The giant spider. You've got to tell us about that.
The giant spider. Okay. So the giant spider situation happened about 2 weeks after the very first thing that kind of kicked all this off for me, the alien in the driveway. And like I said, guys, if you want to hear more about that, go check me out on my channel. I've got everything documented. It's a good story. But anyways, I am in the process of moving out of that trailer, for obvious reasons. And I'm getting ready to go to school that morning because I was in college at the time. And I'm coming out of the door and I'm walking to the car. And as I get out and start walking down the steps, I notice that there's something on the tree over here that's kind of moving, and in my brain, it just kind of registers it as squirrel, don't pay no mind. I keep walking and I'm fixing to get to the car, then all of a sudden this shaking shape moves and darts down the tree, and then it goes and stands right in the middle of the dirt road. And oddly enough, it does stand in the exact place where I saw that entity that night. I don't know if the two are connected. Probably not, but maybe, but who knows. Anyways, and it just stops right there in the middle of the dirt road and it lies flat. It's got four legs going forward, four legs going back. It is a spider. Now, this spider is the size of my car tire. If I'm lying, I'm dying, y'all. And by car tire, I do not mean the rim. No, I mean rim plus tire. I mean, well, let's see if I can get in here. I mean, it's like every bit of like this big around, all spread out. It's like its abdomen's not that big, it's not like that. We're not talking about Aragog from the Lord of the Rings. We're talking about 24 inches, at least out all the way, maybe more. And I'm in shock, like, I hate spiders. Oh my God. And I'm just like, okay, okay. That is way too big, and that thing needs to die by fire. I don't have fire, but, I gingerly open the car door, reach in for the 9mm, rack a bullet in, like, ooh, stay there, stay there. And right as I'm getting able to draw on this thing, as it's flat, it kind of jumps up like this and skitters through the long grass, and I lose it, disappears. And I'm just like, no. I was gonna put that thing in the freezer and have proof and be a real cool dude and show it to everybody. But it took off. But it was a daytime sighting, so I mean, I saw it. It was once again like kind of like a tree bark type color, with light gray and dark grays and a little bit of black, like individual hairs. It had stripes on the arms that were anywhere from like a dark brown color to almost an orangish. And, I did everything I could to try to figure it out. I'm like, okay, spider is something I can look at, and try to figure something out. Granted, before this time, me, the wife, and her mother, we owned a pet store, and I was the reptile guy. I dealt with tarantulas. I've gone to the distributors and bought and sold Goliath bird-eating spiders. For some odd reason, people think they're amazing pets. Whatever. I'm not spending $100+ on a stupid spider, but that's just me. I've seen pretty big spiders, and this looked like none of them. It was not built like any tarantula or anything. It was strange. So I'm like, okay, where I've got to be able to do some kind of research and find out what the heck I just saw. And I don't remember if it was on Nat Geo or maybe I feel like Monster Quest did an episode on giant spiders. Like, I don't remember, but I remember, one of the segments of it was like they were talking about what they thought was the biggest spider in North America, and it was the black water spider. I was like, oh, okay, this is interesting. Okay, tell me more. And apparently this thing does get very large, and it, hunts obviously within the water until it gets about hand size. And once it gets at that point, it leaves the water system and goes arboreal and goes up into the tree canopy. And there's not enough researchers or people that even like want to try to go out and figure out how big they actually get. They gave me the caveat, the out. We don't know how big they get after this point. So for me, it was just like, well, they gave me the out. I Googled the image of what those things look like. I'm like, it looks almost exactly like that. Maybe. I mean, people have been putting some crazy pictures of those things on on the old internets here lately, and I've seen pictures of people going through like Louisiana with one of those things, like holding like a terrapin turtle and feasting on its neck, and it's like, "Ugh, I can't stand spiders. They're gross." But those particular ones get really big. Was that what I saw exactly? I don't know. I know it looks extremely similar, and I never want to see that as long as I live. So that is the spider story.
Can't say I'll blame you at all. What I really don't understand about this whole idea about giant spiders is normally they're limited size wise by their book lungs. That's the kind of lungs they have. They don't
Mhm.
have respiratory systems like a mammal, obviously. They have what are called book lungs.
Mm,
And beyond a certain size, those book lungs just aren't efficient enough to support that body mass. So that's
mm,
why you don't see spiders normally get beyond a certain size. But
mhm.
with these guys, maybe they have an adaptation where their lungs are different. I don't know if giant spiders are out there, just like with Dogmen and Sasquatch. It really makes you wonder what can't be out there.
Yeah, I mean, shoot, to be fair, didn't they just discover a new species of spider in the Congo like last month or something that was pretty enormous in some like cave system or whatever? Like, I mean, the world's pretty crazy. Who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, that it is. Well, let's get back to Dogman now. I've got another
Sure.
question for you from NG, and he wants to know, does he think dogmen are supernatural or flesh and blood?
Yes. Yes. So for me, I think it's all of the above. I feel like even coming from like the supernatural perspective of things, when they are in this reality, they have to abide by the laws of physics. You know, that's that's just the way it works. And obviously in the the way that I look at things, they have s- at least half of their DNA, for lack of a better terms, that comes from a supernatural origin and therefore can do some crazy stuff. You know, like I said, as far as I'm concerned, werewolves are real in the classical sense, skinwalkers are real, basically the same thing. You know, government created chimeras are probably real. We have plenty of stories of people talking about them coming onto their property and all of a sudden, you know, the men in black show up or somebody maybe takes one out and the men in black show up, like, you killed our asset, yada yada. Like that seems to be a thing. We have the cynocephaly of ancient times that's talked about. We have, you know, we look into Genesis 6 and the book of Enoch. We see all flesh is corrupted. See that there is a historic thing that can account for the creation of such a thing. Like, there is so many different routes of which these things can come from. Although I would say, in my worldview, that they come from the same source ultimately in the long run. But do I think that there is a bipedal direwolf or something like that that evolved over time? No, I don't see that as the case. I don't think that there's there's absolutely no fossil proof to even show any reason for something that is canid to leave the niche that it's in and be something different. Like, I don't put any stock into that personally. If you guys out there in YouTube land want to, hey, that's fine. I'm happy to talk to you guys about it and hear what y'all think, because it's all interesting. It's all interesting. You know, I I do think that there is a little bit of something maybe in the terms of like the lesser known cryptid that is the devil monkey, that might be the closest thing that you could find to a flesh and blood animal with that would be similar, but definitely not the same thing. But once again, that's my own personal opinion. Your mileage may vary.
Well, you're more than entitled to it, just like all of us are. It looks like Blood Viper wants to know, did you have mind speak from the dog man, and did you get any warning feelings before you saw it? He also says, thank you, Vic, for everything you do for people like myself. Well, you're welcome. Love to be in a position to help.
Well, I can definitely say that Vic is the best of people for sure. So, and I love you to death, brother. But as
Thank
far
you.
as mind speak goes, oh yeah, anytime, anytime. As far as mind speak goes, no, I've not gotten that from anything except for the alien that I encountered in my driveway. That was the one and only time that I've had mind speak. I can describe what that feels like, but that would be the only thing that I've ever experienced with it. So,
That answers that. I've got another one for you. This one is from Carrie. Carrie wants to know, did you ever see the wolf dog again?
nope. It never showed back up the next following Monday or anything like that. And, I worked there for 4 more years after that. Never came over there again. This is the last time it was ever seen.
That's a good question. This next one up on deck is from Unreal Estate Agent 770, and he wants to know, did you ever see any eye color illumination?
So no, not really. 007, I did see like when it was the dog, it was more of like a yellowish, goldish kind of color. Like as it moved around within the lights of the parking lot. But as I was driving, no, its eyes were solely focused straight ahead. It looked to me like what I could see of the sclera, like its eyes were kind of, small from what I could see, you know, probably, and I would say that it's more because eyes are more forward facing, and I'm seeing it as side profile. I mean, they were very dark and, kind of like heavily browed, but it was a very dark color. Could I say that its sclera was black? No. But I do know that I saw no eye reflection when it was sitting there. So hopefully that answers that.
That does answer it. It's a good job answering it too. NG wants to know, is there any real documented evidence of government agents slash soldiers hunting dogmen? There are claims that have been put out there, but I don't know how real those claims are. All we can do is guess about that. I've got my
Exactly.
opinions though.
Mm. As do I. As do I. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, how would you document that? And how would you even get that released? You know?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. This next one is from Unreal Estate Agent 770. They want to know, did you feel as though it was knowing your thoughts?
Hmm. That's a good question. I would say that maybe, but I doubt it. I think it was more of a knowing and understanding of a body language type of thing, and also realizing that I did not allow it to break the threshold, if you would, in classical literature sense. Therefore, it decided to eventually give up. That's my thoughts. But
Well, all you can do is just look at everything that you experienced and come to the clearest conclusion you can on that. That's the
right.
best you can do. I've got one for you from Eminem. They want to know, hi Vic, question for Jim. I'm super curious as to if you noticed anything weird about the 14-year-old kid that came to get the dog, the wolf dog, or their interaction while in your presence.
You know, as far as that goes, like I said, he was just basically like some kind of super edge lord, you know. kind of gothy, kind of very sure of himself, and just I don't know, just very much like a punk trying to prove something is the best way that I would describe him, And maybe that's not like the fairest assessment. We were all dumb and did silly things when we were 14. But, like I said, like knowing what I do know about plenty of the people that live in that area being attached to the occult, like I knew a lot of them. Like they worked with me, and they weren't all bad, but that I wouldn't want to go and hang out with them in a graveyard on a Saturday night. Just call me crazy. So I don't know, but I mean, he definitely had a vibe, and there was definitely a feeling of just being really sketchy. Like, yeah,
Why wouldn't you want to hang out with people like that in the graveyard at night?
they always want to bust out the candles and start getting the Ouija boards out, and eh, yeah, I'm not about that life, bro.
Yeah, not my
Seen too
idea of a
much
good
of it. I
time.
don't want it.
I don't blame you. Not my idea of a good time either. I've
Right.
got another one for you from Linda 40K. She wants to know if you tangled with a dog man, please describe what wounds were received.
I mean, I I didn't, but I would imagine that you would have probably quite the lacerations, if not chunks of flesh missing. So I don't know. What would you say, Vic?
Oh, phew, I can only imagine the wounds. If it was really playing for keeps, I mean, you would just be dead instantly. But that's not what these guys do normally. There have been
Right.
people who've been killed, of course, but yeah, that's the exception, not the norm. Thank goodness, too.
Mm, for sure. For sure.
Here's a question of the night for you. It looks like Caleb Gates wants to know how much you bench.
I don't know. I haven't worked out at the gym in a very long time. I've been too busy with podcasts, so I don't know. A decent bit, I guess. I'm not the biggest dude in the world, but I don't know, probably at least 150, 200 pounds, maybe. Maybe. I don't know. I remember I used to be able to leg press about 1,000 pounds. But then again, the way a leg press machine works, it's different physics involved, and it's way different than squatting. So I don't know how applicable it is. I'm not the biggest dude in the world. When I was young, I took well, I guess MMA before MMA was really a thing. I'm a fighter originally, and I never really trained to bulk more, just be big enough for the weight class that I fought in, which was in 150. So maybe that answer something. I'm old now, y'all, so I'm not in the same shape I used to be in. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I can relate to that. Looks like Bug wants to know, do you think Dogmen and Bigfoot are enemies or neutral?
Uh, my personal opinion, I would say depends on the situation. Depends entirely on the situation and knowing what Bigfoot slash and or Dogman are. You'd have to know. Then there's the whom do you serve kind of question. And sometimes, speaking in, spiritual terms, not everything that is bad plays nicely with other things that are bad. So sometimes they get along, sometimes they don't get along. That's my opinion. I haven't had enough people that have told me stories that have encountered them interacting with each other to know. Like my good buddy Martin Groves, he's had some experience with seeing that a little bit. So I mean, I would say ask him, but then again, also we have an encyclopedia of knowledge and experiences right there with Mr. Cundiff. What would you say?
Well, it seems like normally they get along like They mix like oil and water, but sometimes apparently they do get along. I mean, there have been some credible eyewitnesses who've reported seeing them together side by side. So it's really hard to know how that dynamic works. Like so many other things, all we can do is just guess.
Exactly. Exactly.
Yeah, that's all we can do. Well, we're an hour and 10 into this. I want to ask you now at this point, before I ask you for your closing comments, Jim, to please take this time to promote your podcast and, of course, also tell the listeners how they can listen to it.
Sure, sure. So as of right now, it's just on the YouTubes, and I'm the Night's Watch. If you do a search and you can't find me, you could put in my old handle name, which is Fisher of Spam, and you'd probably find me that way. But yeah, come hang out with me. Like I said, I interview folks too. I'll sit there and talk to normal people and hear their stories, or even tell it for them if they would rather. I have researchers that will come on and talk about anything from Bigfoot and Dogman to aliens and what have you. And I also, go out into the field. I try to live by the motto of don't just talk about it, but be about it. So, I do a little bit of all of that stuff, and you'll see that on my channel. There's more to come. Season 2 for my show starts taping in September, and they will begin to air in October. So there's all that. But until then, there's plenty of back member episodes that are only, $1, make you holla a month. If you want just to really dig and see how my brain kind of processes things, I just go off and chase squirrels all day long on those episodes. But yeah, I mean that's me, and eventually you're gonna start finding me too on Spreaker and everything that kind of gets put out to. So yeah, let's see here. Well, when I know the name of what that show is even going to be called on the History Channel, I'm going to be on an episode on the History Channel soon. I filmed that, or they filmed me for that 2 months ago now. So yeah, you're going to see me a little bit here and there, especially if you're looking for me. I'm a small fish, but I'm trying to make moves. So I'd love it if you guys come and hang out with me. I might not be your particular flavor of spam, but I'm a cool dude. And I'll, even if we disagree on things, I kind of pride myself in being able to come to whatever level my guest is on and speak to them from that level. So come hang out. Come hang out.
And about a month ago, you had a pretty low character guy on your show as well. Wasn't it about 4 weeks ago?
I think it was. Yeah, there's this one guy named Vic that came on and talked to me a little bit about some old Sasquatch, and he seemed a little shady, but overall, he's a pretty cool dude.
Yeah, more than a little shady,
I
but it was
know.
a good time. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, man, I appreciate you. Thank you so much for coming on. It means the world to me. I love to hang out with my friends.
Well, that goes two ways. Well, before we do get out of here, Jim, you have any closing comments you want to put out there for us?
I guess the closing comments. I'll do it like I end my show, and I'll just say, tookie tookie, peace, and I love you. So that's all I got, brother.
That's about the most quotable closing comments I think I've ever heard on the show.
Yes, sir. Nailed it.
Yeah, I'd say you did. Well, thanks again so much for coming on here, Jim. I really appreciate it. Thanks so much for your time. And please
Sure.
remember, if I can ever help you, just let me know.
Sure thing, man. That goes two ways. If I can help you, let me know. I'll do it. And everybody out there in YouTube land, podcast land, thanks y'all for hanging out with me. I really enjoyed it. And take them easy.
Also, too, for anyone wondering, of course, I'm going to post a link to Jim's YouTube channel in the description for tonight's show. That'll make it really easy to find if you have any trouble finding it. But having said that, thanks again so much for your time, Jim, and have a great night.
You too, bro.
Thanks. We'll see ya. All right. That's it for another episode in the books. Before I get out of here, just wanted to put it out there for you. Two things here. Of course, I released another new episode for my new Dogman podcast called Dogman Tales. Tales is spelled Tales, not Tails, so that you know. Dogman Tales has fictional stories about dogmen. They're not true. And also, Dogman Tales is not available on YouTube. It's only available via your favorite podcast app or wherever, however you listen to podcasts. So if you haven't checked it out, highly recommend you do so. Also, one last thing, if you've had a Dogman encounter that you either need help coming to terms with, or maybe you want to come on the show and share it with the listeners, be a guest, please go to dogmanencounters.com if that's you. Submit a report, and if you do that, then of course I'll contact you to schedule a phone consultation, and we'll take it from there. But having said that, thanks again so much for listening, everyone. Really appreciate you doing that, and have a great night.